My school superintendent launched a witch hunt against me for helping a dying girl graduate, so I destroyed his career with his own evidence. I was in senior year when my classmate Alice was diagnosed with 5 months left to live, and everyone may not have known her name, but they knew her smile, the one to light up every room she walked into. Up until the diagnosis, she had a 3.9 GPA and an almost guaranteed place in Yale, but now she was failing. She never said it out loud, but you could tell by the way she shoved every test into her backpack like she was ashamed. I was sitting beside her when the English teacher offered to give free tutoring and resources to help catch up. Alice said no. I later found out that the principal had banned her from any additional help because he's not here to make life easy, no exceptions. But we all knew how much graduating was on her bucket list. It was obvious. She still had photos of herself wearing Yale merchandise all over her locker and notebooks. But the principal had practically made it his mission to stop her from graduating. Said he wanted to make an example out of the students who think it's okay to stop prioritizing their studies. Like, what the F? That's when I decided to hatch a plan. I was going to go behind Alice's back and completely betray her. You see, me and my parents live pretty comfortably, so they donate a lot of money to the school to make sure that the teachers always put in extra effort when they mark my tests. It wasn't something I wanted, but my parents insisted. And despite being rich, they're somewhat good people. I knew if I told them about Alice, they would pull some strings, but I also knew that if Alice found out, she would try to stop me because she doesn't want to be pitied. So I did it all without her knowing. And that's how me and my parents spent our Monday mornings sitting across Principal Davis, threatening him. We demand that you give Alice a chance to graduate and let her attend the ceremony. My dad's voice was so assertive that it even sent chills down my spine. Principal Davis responded, "I'm sorry, sir, but we can't allow that to happen. This school has a policy to uphold, and I don't want other students to get lazy. The girl has cancer, for crying out loud. In 5 months' time, she will be 6 feet under." My dad slammed his fist on the table. Principal Davis just sighed. "Sir, my hands are tied. Even if I wanted to do anything, I can't. The superintendent would never allow it. I would be fired." He then got this really sad look in his eyes, like he wished he could do more. That's when I finally understood that this wasn't just a fight against one man. It was a fight against the system, and time was ticking. Me and my parents walked out after that. Their faces were flat, completely deflated, but I wasn't done yet. You see, I knew Principal Davis would say no. I just needed the verbal confirmation so I could unfold the next part of my plan, an illegal meetup. The next morning, I went to Ms. O'Callahan, the guidance counselor, and told her everything. "I told you he'd say no," I said. She went silent. I just didn't realize we would have to take it this far. The room was so still, you could practically hear the walls breathing. When the bell rang, I left. But I knew Ms. O'Callahan took our plan seriously, because 3 weeks later, Alice's grades were back up. I watched as her face lit up when she got her test back. It was the happiest I'd seen her in months. You see, the guidance counselor pulled some strings so that Alice could get unauthorized tutoring from the best teachers in the nearby rival school. They were unlicensed to tutor and met in Alice's house, completely off-site from school grounds. But it still wasn't the happy ending she needed, because as I peered over at the paper, I saw her grade. It was a C-, better than the fails she'd been getting, but still not enough to graduate, so I kept going. I found the number of her chemotherapist and called asking if she could make sure Alice's appointments were all early in the morning. Obviously, it would have been easier for Alice to just do it herself, but like I said, she was stubborn, the type of girl to think that asking for help made her weak. There was no way she would do it herself. And for every class we shared, I wrote 2 assignments, one under her name and one under mine. As soon as I saw hers in the pile, I would slip it into the waistband of my pants and replace it with the one I had done for her. I even replicated her handwriting to make sure no one noticed. Fast forward to the 23rd of May, and it was our graduation ceremony. People clapped extra loud when Alice walked on stage. I felt tears well up in my eyes. The entire time, she barely even knew who I was, but it didn't matter. What mattered was that she got her dying wish. And on June 24th, I was standing at her funeral in a suit that I borrowed from my dad. In the photo frame, she was standing in her graduation gown with the same smile we all loved. I thought I had done the right thing by making her dream come true. But a month later, I woke up to a knock at the door. It was Ms. O'Callahan, my guidance counselor. She was in tears. "They're on to us. The superintendent has been building a case. We need to get our stories straight." My stomach dropped. I froze. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Ms. O'Callahan stood on my doorstep, mascara running down her cheeks, hands shaking as she clutched her purse. Behind her, I could see her car parked crooked against the curb, like she'd been in too much of a hurry to park properly. "What do you mean they're on to us?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She pushed past me into the house, glancing over her shoulder like someone might be following. "Morrison, Superintendent Morrison. He got an anonymous tip about grade irregularities. Someone told him about Alice's sudden improvement." My legs felt weak. I closed the door and leaned against it. But how could anyone know? We were so careful. Ms. O'Callahan collapsed onto our couch, burying her face in her hands. That's what I thought too. But Morrison's been interviewing teachers all week, one by one, threatening their licenses if they don't cooperate. The room started spinning. I thought about all those assignments I'd written, all those times I'd switched papers. Had someone seen me? Had I been too obvious? "Who would do this?" I asked, sinking into the chair across from her. She looked up, eyes red and puffy. "I have my suspicions. There was another student, Jonathan Chen. He was waitlisted at Yale. When Alice passed away, her spot should have gone to him, but it went to someone else instead. He's been bitter about it all summer. My stomach churned. Jonathan, of course. He'd always been competitive, always checking class rankings, always asking about other people's grades. But to do this? To attack a dead girl's memory? What exactly does Morrison know? I asked. Mrs. O'Callahan pulled a tissue from her purse, dabbing at her eyes. He knows about the tutoring. He's already contacted the rival school, asking about unauthorized tutoring violations. Their teachers are panicking. I felt the blood drain from my face. Those teachers had risked their careers to help Alice. They'd driven to her house on their own time, taught her for free, all because they believed she deserved a chance. And now they were in trouble because of me. There's more, Miss O'Callahan continued, her voice cracking. Morrison suspended me this morning, pending investigation. What? He can't do that. He can, and he did. Said I violated district policy by arranging unauthorized academic assistance. She laughed bitterly. 20 years of perfect service, and this is what I get for trying to help a dying girl. I stood up, pacing the room. My mind raced through possibilities, trying to find a way out. What about Principal Davis? He knew what we were doing. He could explain that. Davis warned me yesterday, she interrupted. Morrison has copies of Alice's assignments, all of them, and he's bringing in handwriting experts. The assignments. My blood turned to ice. I'd been so careful to copy her handwriting, but experts, they'd see right through it. They'd know. I need to tell my parents, I said, already moving toward the stairs. Ms. O'Callahan grabbed my arm. Wait, there's something else. Morrison's planning to send formal letters to all the parents involved. Academic fraud charges. Academic fraud. The words echoed in my head. This wasn't just about getting in trouble at school anymore. This was about my future, my parents' reputation, everything we'd worked for. When? I asked. Soon. Maybe tomorrow. He's scheduling a mandatory hearing where you'll have to testify under oath about Alice's grades. Under oath. Like I was some kind of criminal. All because I tried to help a dying girl achieve her last wish. I heard footsteps on the stairs. My parents appeared, still in their work clothes, concern etched on their faces. What's going on? My mother asked, looking between me and Ms. O'Callahan. I opened my mouth to explain, but no words came out. How could I tell them that their son might be facing fraud charges? That their donations to the school were about to become evidence against us? Ms. O'Callahan stood up, smoothing her skirt. Mr. and Mrs. Chen, I'm afraid we have a situation. My father's expression hardened. He'd always been protective of our family, always ready to fight when necessary. But this felt different. This wasn't about money or influence. This was about something we'd done in secret, something that looked wrong on paper, even though we knew it was right. As Miss O'Callahan explained the situation, I watched my parents' faces change from confusion to anger to fear. My mother sank into a chair, hand over her mouth. My father's jaw clenched and unclenched, a sign I recognized from childhood that meant he was trying to control his temper. This Morrison, my father said finally, his voice dangerously quiet. He's really going after a dead girl's grades? He says he's protecting academic integrity, Ms. O'Callahan replied. But I think there's more to it. He's been especially aggressive about this case. My mother looked at me, tears in her eyes. Why didn't you tell us what you were doing? Because you would have tried to handle it officially, I said, and that would have taken too long. Alice only had 5 months, and now you might lose your future, she whispered. The doorbell rang, making us all jump. Through the window, I could see a figure on our porch, a woman holding a box. I opened the door cautiously. Alice's mother stood there, looking older than I remembered, grief etched into every line of her face. Mrs. Kim, I said, surprised. What are you doing here? May I come in? She asked quietly. I stepped aside, and she entered, clutching the box to her chest like it contained something precious. In the living room, she looked at the assembled group, her eyes lingering on Mrs. O'Callahan's tear-stained face. I heard about the investigation, she said simply, about what you all did for Alice. My heart hammered in my chest. Was she angry? Did she think we'd dishonored her daughter's memory? She set the box on our coffee table and opened it with trembling hands. Inside were notebooks, photos, and what looked like a diary. This is Alice's, she said, pulling out the diary. I've been reading it since she passed. I needed to feel close to her. She opened it to a marked page and handed it to me. Alice's handwriting, neat and precise even in her final months, filled the page. I read aloud, my voice shaking. I know someone's been helping me. The assignments that come back aren't mine. The tutors who show up claim to be Mom's friends, but I've never seen them before. Even my chemo schedule changed to early mornings so I won't miss class. I should probably say something, should tell them I know, but I can't. Because if I do, they'll stop. And I need this. I need to graduate. I need to make it to that stage. So I'll pretend I don't notice, and I'll be grateful every single day for these angels who think I don't know they exist. Tears blurred my vision. She knew. The whole time, she knew. Mrs. Kim reached back into the box and pulled out a USB drive. This is security footage from our home system. It shows the rival teachers coming to tutor Alice as family friends, legally. Ms. O'Callahan gasped. You mean, I listed them as family friends visiting a sick relative, Mrs. Kim said. It's all documented. They weren't providing unauthorized tutoring. They were family friends helping with homework during visits. My father leaned forward. Mrs. Kim, why are you doing this? She looked at him with eyes that had seen too much pain. Because my daughter died happy. She died believing she'd earned her graduation. That's worth more than all the academic integrity in the world. She pulled out more papers from the box. I've also been doing some research on Superintendent Morrison. Did you know his daughter applied to Yale this year? We all shook our heads. She was rejected, Mrs. Kim continued, for plagiarism. But Morrison blamed it on grade inflation at other schools, said other students were getting unfair advantages. The pieces clicked into place. This wasn't about academic integrity at all. This was personal. He's using Alice to make a point, my mother said, understanding dawning on her face. Mrs. Kim nodded. I think so, and I won't let him, not with my daughter's memory. She stood up, leaving the box on our table. Use whatever you need from here. The diary, the footage, all of it. Alice would want me to protect the people who helped her. After she left, we sat in stunned silence. The evidence she'd provided changed everything, but Morrison was still coming for us. He still had the power to destroy our futures. We need a lawyer, my father said finally. I know someone, Ms. O'Callahan offered. Someone who specializes in education law. As they made phone calls and plans, I stared at Alice's diary. Her words echoed in my mind. These angels who think I don't know they exist. She'd known all along, and she'd been grateful. The next morning, I woke to find my parents already dressed, coffee brewing, papers spread across the dining table. Our lawyer, a sharp-dressed woman named Catherine Walsh, sat with them, highlighting documents. The hearing is tomorrow, she said when she saw me. We need to go over your testimony. I sat down, still groggy. What should I say? The truth, she replied, but carefully. Morrison's made some procedural errors we can exploit. She showed me a stack of papers. This is the formal investigation documentation, or rather, what should be formal documentation. Morrison never filed the proper paperwork to launch an official investigation. What does that mean? It means everything he's collected might be inadmissible, but we need to be strategic about when we reveal this. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Your family's donations won't save you this time. I showed it to Catherine, who photographed it immediately. Harassment. Add it to the file. The day passed in a blur of preparation. Catherine coached me on what to say, how to say it, what to avoid. My parents contacted other parents, warning them about Morrison's investigation. Mrs. O'Callahan, despite her suspension, worked from home, gathering support from teachers who'd witnessed Morrison's threats. That evening, Principal Davis showed up at our door. I'm not supposed to be here, he said, glancing around nervously. My father let him in anyway. Davis looked older than I remembered, stress adding years to his face. Morrison's lost it, he said without preamble. He's been accessing school records after hours. I have security footage of him entering the building at 2 a.m., going through Alice's files. After she died? My mother asked, horrified. Davis nodded. He's obsessed, claims he's protecting the system, but he trailed off, then seemed to gather courage. I'm retiring anyway. I won't let him destroy good people on my way out. He handed my father a flash drive. Security footage, time-stamped, shows him accessing records without authorization, after hours, post-mortem. Why are you helping us? I asked. Davis looked at me sadly. Because I should have helped Alice when she was alive. I let fear of Morrison keep me from doing what was right. I won't make that mistake again. After he left, Catherine reviewed the footage, a smile spreading across her face. This is good. Very good. Morrison violated numerous protocols. Is it enough? My mother asked. Combined with everything else? It should be. But doubt gnawed at me. Morrison had power, connections. He'd been superintendent for 15 years. Would evidence be enough to stop him? The morning of the hearing arrived too quickly. I put on my best suit, hands shaking as I tied my tie. Downstairs, my parents waited, dressed like they were going to a funeral. Whatever happens, my mother said, hugging me, we're proud of you for helping Alice. The hearing was held at the district office, a cold building that smelled like old coffee and disappointment. Morrison sat at the head of a long table, files spread before him like weapons. School board members flanked him, their faces unreadable. Let's begin, Morrison said, not bothering with pleasantries. We're here to investigate serious allegations of academic fraud. Morrison's voice droned on, listing violations and policies, but I barely heard him. My eyes were fixed on the stack of papers in front of him, knowing my forged assignments were somewhere in that pile. Catherine sat beside me, her expression calm, but I could see her pen tapping against her legal pad in a steady rhythm. The evidence clearly shows a pattern of deception, Morrison continued, pulling out a folder. Grade improvements that defy logic, assignments that don't match the student's previous work patterns. One of the school board members, a woman with gray hair pulled back in a severe bun, leaned forward. Mr. Morrison, before we proceed, can you confirm that all proper protocols were followed in gathering this evidence? Morrison's jaw tightened slightly. Of course, Mrs. Henderson. Everything was done by the book. Catherine made a small note on her pad. I glanced at it. First lie. Now, Morrison said, opening the folder. I'd like to present Exhibit A, Alice Kim's assignments from her final months. He spread several papers across the table. Notice the dramatic improvement in quality and the suspicious consistency in handwriting, despite her deteriorating health condition. My stomach clenched. Those were the assignments I'd written for her. I could recognize my own attempts at copying her handwriting from across the table. We had handwriting experts analyze these, Morrison continued, his voice taking on a triumphant edge. They confirmed what we suspected. These assignments were not written by Alice Kim. The room felt smaller suddenly, the air thicker. I could feel my parents tense beside me. Catherine stood slowly. Mr. Morrison, may I ask how these assignments came into your possession? Morrison's eyes narrowed. They were collected as part of the investigation. When exactly were they collected? Catherine pressed. That's not relevant to— It's entirely relevant, Catherine interrupted smoothly. According to school policy, any investigation involving student records requires specific documentation and approval. May we see that documentation? Morrison shuffled through his papers. I have the authority as superintendent to access records during school hours with proper documentation, yes, Catherine said. But these records were accessed on July 15th at 2:17 a.m., weren't they? The color drained from Morrison's face. How did you— Security footage, Mr. Morrison. You entered the school building after hours, without authorization, to access the records of a deceased student. Catherine's voice was steel wrapped in silk. That's not just a policy violation. That's breaking and entering. Mrs. Henderson's eyes widened. Is this true, Morrison? Before he could answer, the door opened. A young woman entered, looking nervous. I recognized her as Morrison's assistant, Sarah. I'm sorry to interrupt, she said, her voice shaking, but I can't do this anymore. She held up a folder. Mr. Morrison asked me to destroy these documents yesterday. I couldn't do it. Morrison shot to his feet. Sarah, you're making a mistake. No, she said, gaining confidence. The mistake was helping you cover this up. She handed the folder to Mrs. Henderson. These are the original investigation request forms. Look at the dates. Mrs. Henderson opened the folder, her expression growing darker with each page she turned. These are all backdated. Morrison, you started this investigation before you claim to have received any tip. There's more, Sarah continued. The anonymous tip he claims started all this? It came from his personal email account. He sent it to himself. The room erupted. Board members talking over each other. Morrison trying to explain. My parents gripping my hands. Through it all, Catherine remained calm, making notes. Furthermore, Sarah said, raising her voice above the chaos, I have emails where Mr. Morrison specifically mentions his daughter's Yale rejection and his plan to expose the grade inflation that cost her a spot. Morrison's face had gone from pale to red. You had no right to access my emails. You gave me your password, Sarah shot back. Told me to monitor your accounts while you were investigating. I have that in writing too. Catherine stood again. I'd like to call our first witness, Dr. Patricia Chen, Alice Kim's oncologist. A screen was wheeled in, and soon Dr. Chen's face appeared via video call. She looked professional, but sympathetic. Dr. Chen, Catherine began, can you tell us about Alice Kim's appointment schedule during her final months? Certainly, Dr. Chen replied. Alice personally requested that all her appointments be scheduled for early morning. She was very specific about not missing school. Morrison leaned forward. When did she make this request? Dr. Chen checked her note. March 15th. She called my office directly. I felt my heart skip. That was 2 weeks before I'd called, pretending to be someone else. Alice had already arranged it herself. So any claim that someone else arranged this schedule would be false? Catherine asked. Completely false. Alice was very proactive about managing her treatment around her education. She was remarkable that way. After Dr. Chen signed off, Catherine called the next witness. The principal from the rival school appeared on screen, looking uncomfortable but determined. Mr. Rodriguez, Catherine began, can you explain the nature of your teacher's visits to Alice Kim's home? They weren't acting as our teachers during those visits, he said carefully. They were visiting as family friends. Mrs. Kim has documentation showing they were listed as extended family members who happened to have teaching backgrounds. So no official tutoring arrangement existed? None whatsoever. Just family friends helping a sick relative with homework during social visits. Morrison slammed his hand on the table. This is ridiculous. Everyone knows what really happened. What I know, Mrs. Henderson interrupted coldly, is that you violated numerous protocols, falsified documents, and pursued a personal vendetta against a dead child. She turned to the other board members. I moved to suspend Superintendent Morrison immediately pending a full ethics investigation. Seconded, another board member said quickly. You can't do this. Morrison stood, his chair scraping against the floor. I've been superintendent for 15 years. I've dedicated my life to maintaining standards. Standards? My father stood too, his voice controlled but furious. You tried to destroy my son's future because your daughter plagiarized her Yale application. That's not maintaining standards. That's abuse of power. Morrison's face contorted. My daughter didn't plagiarize. She was sabotaged by grade inflation, by students like Alice Kim getting advantages they didn't deserve. Alice Kim was dying. The words burst out of me before I could stop them. Everyone turned to look at me. I stood on shaking legs. She had 5 months to live, and all she wanted was to graduate, to walk across that stage, to make her parents proud one last time, and you want to take that away from her, even after she's gone? Tears were streaming down my face now, but I didn't care. Yes, I helped her. Yes, I wrote some of her assignments. Yes, I arranged for tutoring. And you know what? I'd do it again, because she deserved to achieve her dream, because she worked harder while dying than your daughter probably ever worked while healthy. How dare you? Morrison started. No, how dare you? I shouted. You accessed her records illegally. You falsified documents. You threatened teachers. You suspended Ms. O'Callahan for having compassion. All because you can't accept that your daughter failed on her own. Catherine put a gentle hand on my arm, but I shook it off. I wasn't done. Alice knew, by the way. She knew everything we were doing. She wrote about it in her diary, about how grateful she was. She called us angels. I laughed bitterly. But you're trying to destroy her memory, her legacy, everything she worked for. What does that make you? The room was silent. Morrison stood there, breathing heavily, his carefully constructed case crumbling around him. Mrs. Henderson cleared her throat. I think we've heard enough. All in favor of immediate suspension? Every hand went up except Morrison's. Motion carried, Mrs. Henderson said. Mr. Morrison, you are suspended effective immediately. Please surrender your keys and access cards. Morrison looked around the room, searching for support that wasn't there. His eyes landed on Sarah, who stared back unflinchingly. This isn't over, he said finally. I'll fight this. Actually, Catherine interrupted. It is over. My clients will not be pursuing any action against you for harassment, defamation, or the emotional distress you've caused them. But that offer expires the moment you leave this room. Continue this vendetta, and we'll see you in court. Morrison's shoulders sagged. He pulled his keys from his pocket and set them on the table with a metallic clink. Without another word, he walked out, his footsteps echoing in the hallway. Mrs. Henderson turned to us. On behalf of the school board, I apologize for what you've been through. Ms. O'Callahan, your suspension is lifted immediately. Please report back to work tomorrow. Ms. O'Callahan, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, burst into tears. Thank you, she whispered. Furthermore, Mrs. Henderson continued, we'll be reviewing our policies regarding compassionate academic accommodations. No student should have to choose between their health and their education. Another board member spoke up. I propose we name it Alice's Law in honor of her memory. The motion passed unanimously. As we gathered our things to leave, Sarah approached me. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I should have spoken up sooner. I knew what he was doing was wrong, but I was scared of losing my job. You spoke up when it mattered, I told her. That took courage. She smiled weakly. Alice was in my younger sister's class. Everyone loved her. When I found out what Morrison was doing, I couldn't let him destroy her memory like that. Outside the building, Principal Davis was waiting. He looked relieved when he saw us. I heard Morrison's been suspended, he said. Good. That man lost his way a long time ago. He turned to Ms. O'Callahan. I'm announcing my retirement next week. I've already recommended you as my replacement. The job's yours if you want it. Ms. O'Callahan's eyes widened. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Davis said simply. This school needs someone who understands that education is about more than just grades and test scores. Someone who remembers that we're dealing with human beings, not statistics. She nodded, fresh tears in her eyes. Yes, of course, yes. As we walked to our cars, my mother pulled me close. What you said in there. We're so proud of you. I just told the truth, I said. Sometimes that's the bravest thing you can do, my father added. That night, I sat at my desk, staring at my laptop. College application season was starting, and Yale's portal was open in front of me. For so long, I'd assumed I'd follow in Alice's footsteps, that Yale was my dream too. But now, I wasn't sure. I pulled out Alice's diary, which Mrs. Kim had insisted I keep. I flipped through the pages, reading her words, seeing her dreams laid out in neat handwriting. One entry caught my eye. Everyone assumes I want to go to Yale because I'm smart, but that's not it. I want to go because they have the best pediatric oncology research program. I want to help kids who are going through what I'm going through. I want to make sure they don't have to choose between treatment and their dreams. I closed the diary, my decision made. I would apply to Yale, but not for me, for her, to continue the work she'd never get to do. The next few weeks passed in a blur. News of Morrison's suspension spread quickly through the district. Other stories started coming out. Teachers and students who'd been bullied by him over the years. An investigation revealed he'd been manipulating grades and records for years, always in small ways, always to prove his points about maintaining standards. His daughter released a statement admitting to the plagiarism and apologizing for her father's actions. She'd been accepted to another college and was trying to move forward. Ms. O'Callahan officially became Principal O'Callahan. Her first act was to establish a fund in Alice's name to help students with serious illnesses keep up with their studies. The rival school's teachers who'd helped Alice were recognized for their compassion, not punished for their rule-breaking. Jonathan Chen, the student who'd been bitter about losing the Yale spot, came to see me one day after school. I heard what happened, he said, not meeting my eyes, with Morrison and everything. I waited, not sure where this was going. I was angry when I didn't get into Yale, he continued. When I heard Alice had graduated even though she'd been sick, I thought it was unfair. I might have said some things to people, complained about grade inflation and special treatment. Did you tip off Morrison? I asked directly. He shook his head. No, but I think my complaints might have given him the idea. I'm sorry. I was so focused on my own disappointment that I forgot Alice was a real person, not just competition. I wanted to be angry, but I just felt tired. She wasn't your competition, Jonathan. She was dying. There's a difference between unfair advantages and basic human compassion. He nodded, looking ashamed. I know that now. I'm sorry. After he left, I thought about how easy it was to lose sight of what really mattered. Morrison had been so focused on his principles that he'd forgotten the people those principles were supposed to serve. Jonathan had been so focused on his goals that he'd forgotten his humanity. 3 months later, I got my Yale acceptance letter. I sat staring at it for a long time, thinking about Alice, about dreams deferred and dreams achieved. My parents were ecstatic, already planning celebrations, but I had one more thing to do first. I drove to the cemetery on a cold December morning, Yale acceptance letter in my pocket. Alice's grave was covered in flowers, even months after her death. People still remembered. They still cared. I knelt beside her headstone, pulling out the letter. Hey, Alice, I got in. To Yale, I mean. Just like you wanted to. I placed the letter against the stone. I'm going to study pediatric oncology. Someone told me they have the best program. The wind rustled through the trees, and for a moment, I could almost hear her laugh, that bright, infectious sound that had lit up every room. Thank you, I whispered, for teaching me what really matters, for showing me that sometimes the rules need to be broken, for proving that kindness matters more than grades. I stood up, leaving the letter there. It would blow away eventually, but that was okay. This moment wasn't about the paper. It was about the promise. As I walked back to my car, I thought about everything that had happened. Morrison was gone, facing ethics charges that would likely end his career in education. Miss O'Callahan was transforming our school into a place where compassion mattered as much as achievement. Alice's Law was being adopted by other districts, ensuring that sick students wouldn't have to choose between their health and their education. But most importantly, Alice had graduated. She'd walked across that stage, worn that cap and gown, made her parents proud. In the end, that was what mattered. Not the grades, not the rules, not the system. Just one girl achieving her dying wish and the people who'd helped make it happen. I got in my car and drove home, ready to start the next chapter. Yale was waiting, but more than that, Alice's dream was waiting. The dream of helping sick kids balance treatment and education, of making sure no one else had to fight the system while fighting for their life. Morrison had called what we did academic fraud, but I knew better now. What we'd done was an act of love, of humanity, of recognition that sometimes the most important lessons can't be measured by grades or test scores. Sometimes they're measured in smiles, in dreams achieved, in the knowledge that when someone needed help, we didn't let rules stop us from doing what was right. That was Alice's real legacy. Not just that she graduated, but that she taught us all what truly mattered. And that was a lesson worth more than any grade. I drove home from the cemetery with shaking hands, the weight of my promise to Alice pressing on my chest. The acceptance letter I'd left at her grave felt like signing a contract with her memory. My phone buzzed repeatedly, but I ignored it, needing these moments alone with my thoughts. When I finally pulled into our driveway, I saw an unfamiliar car parked outside. A woman in a business suit stood by our front door, briefcase in hand. My parents were already there, my mother's arms crossed defensively. "This is Catherine Walsh from the State Education Department," my father said as I approached. His tone made my stomach drop. Catherine extended her hand, which I shook mechanically. "I'm here about the Morrison investigation. There are some developments you need to know about." Inside, she spread documents across our dining table. "Morrison filed an appeal yesterday. He's claiming wrongful termination and demanding reinstatement." My mother's face went pale. "Can he do that?" "Unfortunately, yes. He's hired a team of lawyers who are arguing that the school board violated proper termination procedures." Catherine's expression was grim. "They're also threatening to subpoena everyone involved in what they're calling the Alice Kim conspiracy." The room tilted. After everything we'd been through, Morrison was still fighting, still trying to destroy what Alice had achieved. "What does this mean for us?" my father asked. Catherine pulled out more papers. "It means the investigation isn't over. Morrison's lawyers are claiming that the evidence against him was obtained illegally. They want to depose everyone, including you." She looked directly at me. My phone rang. Miss O'Callahan's name flashed on the screen. I answered, putting it on speaker. "Did Catherine reach you?" Her voice was strained. "Morrison's lawyers just served me papers. They're demanding I step down as principal until this is resolved." "They can't do that," I protested. "They're claiming I was appointed through corruption, that Davis only recommended me because I helped cover up academic fraud." She paused. "The school board is meeting in an hour to discuss suspending me again." Catherine gathered her papers. "I need to be at that meeting. Morrison's lawyers will be there. You should come too." We piled into cars and drove to the district office. The parking lot was packed. News vans lined up outside. Someone had leaked the story. Reporters shouted questions as we hurried inside. The boardroom was standing room only. Morrison sat at one end of the table, flanked by 3 lawyers in expensive suits. He looked different, harder somehow, his eyes cold as they swept over us. Mrs. Henderson called the meeting to order. "We're here to address the appeal filed by former Superintendent Morrison regarding his termination." Morrison's lead lawyer, a sharp-faced man named Nathan Blackwood, stood immediately. "My client was terminated without due process based on illegally obtained evidence and the testimony of compromised witnesses. We demand immediate reinstatement and a full investigation into the conspiracy to defraud the academic system." He produced a thick folder. "We have evidence that Principal Davis, Ms. O'Callahan, and others orchestrated a cover-up of systematic grade manipulation. The so-called Alice Kim case was merely the tip of the iceberg." Sarah, Morrison's former assistant, stood up from the back of the room. "That's a lie. I have emails showing Morrison fabricated evidence against other students too. He's been doing this for years." Nathan turned on her. "Ms. Mitchell, you're facing potential criminal charges for accessing private emails without authorization. Your testimony is worthless." "Actually," Catherine interjected, standing, "Ms. Mitchell was given explicit authorization to access those accounts. I have the written directive from Morrison himself." She produced a document. "Furthermore, I've been conducting my own investigation. Morrison didn't just falsify the Alice Kim investigation. He manipulated grade records for dozens of students over the past 5 years, always to support his personal theories about academic standards." Morrison shot to his feet. "Those are baseless accusations. I have the evidence right here," Catherine continued, pulling out a flash drive. "Database logs showing Morrison accessing and altering student records, not just viewing them, but changing grades, test scores, even attendance records." Mrs. Henderson took the flash drive. "This is serious. If true, these are criminal actions." Nathan tried to interject, but Catherine wasn't done. "There's more. Morrison used his position to ensure certain students, particularly those from wealthy families who didn't donate to his preferred causes, received lower grades. He called it maintaining balance." A man in the audience stood up. "My daughter was one of those students. Her grades mysteriously dropped junior year, costing her a scholarship. Morrison told me it was because she wasn't working hard enough, but I knew something was wrong." Another parent stood. "Same thing happened to my son. Morrison had a grudge against our family because we supported a school board candidate he didn't like." The room erupted as more parents began sharing stories. Morrison's face grew redder with each accusation. "This is a witch hunt," he shouted. "These people are lying to protect the real criminals." Principal Davis entered the room then, carrying a banker's box. "No, Morrison, the only criminal here is you." He set the box on the table. "These are records I've been keeping for the past 3 years. Every time you ordered me to change a grade, every time you accessed files without authorization, every threat you made against teachers who didn't comply with your demands." Morrison's lawyers huddled, whispering frantically. Nathan stood again. "These allegations are unsubstantiated. You demand nothing." Mrs. Henderson cut cut him off. Mr. Morrison, in light of these new allegations, your appeal is denied. Furthermore, I'm recommending criminal charges be filed immediately. She turned to the room. Ms. O'Callahan, your position as principal is secure. The board apologizes for any distress this situation has caused. Morrison lunged across the table, trying to grab the evidence box. Security guards restrained him as he shouted, "You don't understand. I was protecting standards. Without me, this whole system will collapse." As they dragged him out, he locked eyes with me. "This is your fault. You and that girl. You destroyed everything." The room fell silent after he was gone. Parents began approaching me, thanking me for standing up to Morrison. Teachers who'd been too scared to speak before shared their own stories of his bullying and manipulation. Catherine pulled me aside. "You should know, the state is launching a full audit of Morrison's tenure. Every student whose grades were improperly altered will have their records corrected. Some may even be eligible for retroactive scholarships or college admissions." "What about Alice's law?" I asked. "It's being fast-tracked for state adoption. What you did for Alice Kim is becoming the model for compassionate academic accommodation statewide." Ms. O'Callahan found me in the hallway afterward. "Thank you," she said simply, "for everything. Alice would be proud." That evening, our house was quiet. The drama was over, but its echoes remained. My parents and I sat around the dinner table, processing everything that had happened. "Morrison's lawyers called," my father said. "They're dropping the case. Apparently, the evidence of his other crimes is overwhelming." My mother reached over and squeezed my hand. "You did the right thing. For Alice. For all those other students." 2 weeks later, I was back at school for senior activities. The hallways felt different somehow, lighter. Teachers smiled more. Students talked openly about their struggles without fear of punishment. Jonathan Chen found me at my locker. "I wanted you to know, I'm organizing a fundraiser for Alice's fund to help sick students. It's the least I can do." I nodded, appreciating the gesture. People could change, could learn from their mistakes. Morrison never had, but others could. That afternoon, I received a call from Dr. Patricia Chen, Alice's oncologist. "I wanted to let you know, we're starting a new program at the hospital. Educational support for pediatric cancer patients. We're calling it Alice's Angels." My throat tightened. "That's beautiful. We'd like you to speak at the launch event, to tell Alice's story and yours. Would you consider it?" "Of course," I said immediately. The launch was held at the hospital's main auditorium. Hundreds of people attended, including families dealing with childhood cancer, medical staff, and educators. I stood at the podium, looking out at the sea of faces, and told them about Alice, about her determination, her secret knowledge of our help, her gratitude. "Alice taught me that sometimes the most important rules are the ones we break," I concluded. "That compassion matters more than compliance. That helping someone achieve their dreams, especially when time is limited, is never wrong." The audience erupted in applause. Afterward, families approached me with their own stories, their own struggles balancing treatment and education. The program would help them all. A month before graduation, I received an unexpected package. Inside was a leather journal and a note from Mrs. Kim. Alice kept 2 diaries. One for her thoughts, which you have. This one was for her future. She wrote in it what she hoped to accomplish at Yale, in her career, in life. I think she'd want you to have it, to carry those dreams forward. I opened the journal carefully. Alice's handwriting filled page after page with dreams, plans, research ideas. Her vision for helping sick children was detailed, thoughtful, revolutionary even. This wasn't just a dying girl's wishes, it was a blueprint for change. At graduation, they held a moment of silence for Alice. Her chair on stage sat empty, except for a single white rose. When they called her name, Mrs. Kim walked across the stage to accept her diploma. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. Principal O'Callahan announced the first recipients of Alice's fund, 3 students battling serious illnesses who would receive full academic support. She also announced that our school would be the pilot site for the state's new compassionate accommodation program. After the ceremony, I found myself standing where Alice's locker used to be. They'd installed a small plaque there, in memory of Alice Kim, whose smile lit up every room and whose courage changed our school forever. Sarah Mitchell approached me. She'd become an advocate for whistleblower protection in education after her role in exposing Morrison. "I wanted to thank you," she said, "for showing me that standing up for what's right matters more than job security." That summer passed quickly. I spent it volunteering at the hospital's new education program, working with kids going through treatment. Each one reminded me of Alice in different ways, their determination to keep learning despite everything. One afternoon, while tutoring a young girl with leukemia, she asked me, "Why do you help us?" I thought about Alice, about her smile, about her dreams, because someone once taught me that education isn't about grades or rules. It's about giving people the chance to become who they're meant to be, no matter how much time they have. The news came in August. Morrison had been sentenced to 3 years in prison for records tampering and fraud. His teaching license was permanently revoked. His daughter had publicly distanced herself from him, focusing on rebuilding her own life and reputation. As I packed for Yale, I carefully placed Alice's future journal in my backpack. Her dreams would come with me, guide my studies, shape my career. I wasn't just going to college, I was carrying forward a mission. The night before I left, there was a knock at my door. Ms. O'Callahan stood there with a small gift bag. Inside was a photo from graduation, Alice's empty chair with the rose, and a note, "Thank you for reminding us all why we became educators. Alice's legacy lives on through you." My parents drove me to Yale. As we passed through the gates, I thought about Alice, about how badly she'd wanted this moment. I pulled out my phone and opened the photo Mrs. Mrs. Kim had given me of Alice in her Yale sweatshirt, smiling that brilliant smile. "I made it, Alice," I whispered. "We made it." At orientation, I met with the head of the Pediatric Oncology Research Program. When I told him about Alice, about her dreams and plans, he leaned forward with interest. "We've been looking for students with that kind of personal investment in our work," he said. "Someone who understands what our patients go through beyond just the medical side." I pulled out Alice's journal. She had ideas, good ones, about integrating education and treatment, about supporting the whole child, not just the patient. He flipped through the pages, his eyes widening. "These are brilliant. Would you be interested in developing some of these concepts as part of your studies?" "That's why I'm here," I said. As I walked across campus afterward, I felt Alice's presence, not in a ghostly way, but in purpose, in determination, in the knowledge that her dreams hadn't died with her. They'd multiplied, spread, touched lives she'd never meet. My first semester was challenging but fulfilling. I threw myself into my studies, driven by the promise I'd made at a graveside. My professors noticed my passion, my personal connection to the work. One connected me with researchers working on educational interventions for hospitalized children. The research team was developing protocols that looked remarkably like what Alice had envisioned in her journal. When I showed them her writings, they were amazed at her insight and asked to name her as a posthumous contributor to their work. Winter break brought news from home. Principal O'Callahan had transformed our school. Test scores were up, but more importantly, student well-being scores had skyrocketed. The compassionate accommodation program was being adopted nationwide. I returned to visit during the holidays. The school felt different, warmer somehow. In the main hallway, they'd installed a display case dedicated to Alice. Her graduation photo sat centered among articles about Alice's law, the fund in her name, and letters from students who'd been helped by the programs created in her memory. Standing there, I realized this was what real legacy looked like. Not just memory, but active change. Not just mourning, but movement forward. A young student approached me, looking at the display. "Did you know her?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "She was my classmate." "My brother has cancer," the girl said quietly. "But he's still going to graduate because of Alice's law. The teachers come to the hospital and everything." My eyes burned with tears. Alice would be so happy to know that. Was she really as nice as everyone says? I smiled, remembering that brilliant smile that lit up every room. Even nicer. She had this way of making everyone feel seen, valued. Even when she was sick, she cared more about others than herself. The girl nodded solemnly. "I want to be like her when I grow up." "You already are," I told her. "Just by caring about your brother, by being here, by remembering her story." As I left the school, I passed Morrison's old office. A new nameplate read, "Superintendent Catherine Walsh." She'd been promoted after her handling of the Morrison investigation. Through the open door, I could see her meeting with parents, her demeanor warm and welcoming, everything Morrison hadn't been. She spotted me and waved me in. "I heard you were visiting. How's Yale?" I told her about my studies, about incorporating Alice's ideas into real research. Her eyes shone with pride. "You know, we've had inquiries from districts all over the country about our programs. What started with one girl's struggle has become a movement." "Alice would have loved that," I said. "She always thought bigger than just herself." "Speaking of which," Catherine pulled out a folder, "we're creating a national scholarship in Alice's name. Full ride to any college for students who've battled serious illness while maintaining their commitment to education. We'd like you to be on the selection committee." I accepted immediately. It was another way to carry forward Alice's legacy, to ensure other students got the chances she'd fought so hard for. That evening, I had dinner with the Kims. They'd redecorated Alice's room, turning it into a study space for 6 students who needed a quiet place to work. Her Yale pennants still hung on the walls, inspiration for kids fighting their own battles. "She would have turned 20 this week," Mrs. Kim said softly. "We wanted to do something meaningful." "You have," I assured her. "This room, the programs, the laws, the scholarships, they're all meaningful. Alice is still changing lives." Mr. Kim nodded. "Sometimes I think she accomplished more in death than most people do in full lifetimes, because she inspired others to act." As I prepared to return to Yale, I visited Alice's grave one more time. Fresh flowers surrounded the headstone, evidence of the many lives she'd touched. I knelt down, placing my hand on the cold stone. "Your journal is helping shape new treatment protocols," I told her. "Your dreams are becoming reality. Kids are staying in school through chemo because of you. Teachers are learning compassion because of you. The system is changing because of you." The wind rustled through the cemetery trees, and I smiled. "I'm keeping my promise, Alice, to study hard, to help kids like you, to make sure no one else has to choose between their health and their dreams. Thank you for teaching me what really matters." As I stood to leave, I noticed a small envelope tucked among the flowers. Inside was a note. "Thank you for helping our daughter graduate. She talks about Alice all the time, says she's her hero. Because of what you all did, our girl knows she can hit cancer and finish school. Forever grateful, the Johnsons." I tucked the note into my pocket, another reminder of why this work mattered. Morrison had tried to destroy what we'd done, but instead, he'd only made it stronger. His downfall had opened doors for real change, systemic change that would outlast us all. Back at Yale, I dove into spring semester with renewed purpose. My research project on educational continuity for hospitalized children was approved, with Alice listed as inspiration and posthumous contributor. Her ideas would be published, studied, implemented. Late one night, working in the library, I came across a quote that stopped me cold. "The purpose of life is not to be happy. It is to be useful, to be honorable, to be compassionate, to have it make some difference that you have lived and lived well. I thought of Alice, of her determination to graduate not for glory, but to make her parents proud, to achieve something meaningful with her limited time. She'd lived well in her short years, and her life had indeed made a difference. My phone buzzed with a text from Principal O'Callahan. Just wanted you to know, we had our first Alice's Law graduate today. Stage 3 lymphoma, missed 80% of senior year, but walked across that stage with her class. Her parents were sobbing. Thought you should know. I smiled through my own tears, picturing another sick student achieving their dream, another family celebrating against the odds. This was Alice's true legacy, not just the memory of one girl's courage, but the ongoing impact of that courage on countless lives. As the semester drew to a close, I received an invitation to speak at the National Education Conference about our experience. They wanted to hear the story from someone who'd been there, who'd seen firsthand how rigid policies could harm vulnerable students and how compassion could transform education. I accepted, knowing it was another chance to spread Alice's message. At the conference, I stood before hundreds of educators and policymakers and told them about a girl whose smile lit up every room, who faced death with dignity and determination, who knew we were helping her but pretended not to, so we wouldn't stop. Alice Kim graduated because people chose compassion over compliance, I concluded. She walked across that stage because teachers risked their careers, because a guidance counselor broke rules, because a community decided that humanity mattered more than handbook policies. Every student facing extraordinary challenges deserves that same chance. The standing ovation was thunderous, but what mattered more were the educators who approached me afterward, promising to implement similar programs in their districts, to fight for their vulnerable students, to remember that behind every grade was a human being with dreams worth protecting. As my freshman year ended, I packed up my dorm room carefully. Alice's journal went into my backpack first, as always. It had become my talisman, my reminder of why I was there. Next year, I'd begin working directly with the pediatric oncology unit, bringing Alice's ideas to life in real time with real patients. The drive home was reflective. So much had changed since that day Ms. O'Callahan showed up at our door in tears. Morrison was in prison, his legacy of cruelty dismantled. The teachers who'd helped Alice were heroes now, not rule breakers. The system that had tried to deny a dying girl her dream had been transformed into one that protected and supported its most vulnerable students. But most importantly, Alice's dream lived on. Not just her dream of graduating, which she'd achieved, but her bigger dream of helping other sick kids balance treatment and education. That dream grew stronger every day, touching lives across the country, changing policies, opening hearts. As I pulled into my driveway, I saw a familiar car. Mrs. Kim stood by our front door, holding a box. "I'm sorry to drop by unannounced," she said, "but I was cleaning out some things and found this. Alice made it during her last month. She said if anything happened to her, I should give it to the person who helped her most. I think that's you." Inside the box was a handmade photo album. The cover read, "My Angels," in Alice's careful handwriting. I opened it to find photos of everyone who'd helped her, candid shots taken without our knowledge. There I was, switching papers in class. Ms. O'Callahan meeting with the rival teachers. Even my parents leaving the principal's office looking determined. The final page held a letter. "To my angels, I know what you're doing. Every forged assignment, every bent rule, every risk you're taking. I see it all, and I'm grateful beyond words. You think you're giving me a diploma, but you're giving me so much more. You're giving me dignity, purpose, the chance to make my parents proud one last time. You're showing me that kindness exists, that people will fight for strangers, that compassion can overcome any system. I love you all. Thank you for helping me fly one last time. Forever grateful, Alice." I clutched the album to my chest, tears streaming freely. She'd known everything, documented everything, loved us for everything. Mrs. Kim hugged me gently. She made me promise to wait until the right time. I think that time is now, when her dreams are becoming reality, when her legacy is secure. She wanted you to know that she knew, and she was thankful. After she left, I sat with my parents, sharing the album. We cried together, laughed together, remembered together. Alice had given us one final gift, the knowledge that our deception had been no deception at all, that our secret help had been seen and cherished. That night, I updated my research proposal for sophomore year. I would create a comprehensive program based on Alice's ideas, one that could be implemented in any hospital, any school, anywhere sick kids needed help staying connected to their education. I would call it the Angel Protocol, in honor of what Alice had called us. As I typed, I felt her presence again, that warm smile, that infectious optimism. She'd been gone over a year, but her impact grew daily. Morrison had tried to erase her achievement, but instead had catalyzed a movement that would help thousands of students. I thought about the butterfly effect, how one girl's determination to graduate had led to systemic change, criminal justice, new laws, transformed lives. Alice had wanted to walk across a stage in a cap and gown. That simple wish had changed the world. My phone lit up with a message from Jonathan Chen. "Fundraiser broke $100,000. Alice's fund can help dozens of students now. Thanks for showing me what really matters." I smiled, adding his message to the growing collection of lives touched by Alice's story. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to carry forward her legacy. But tonight, I simply sat with her album, grateful for the chance to have been her angel, even more grateful that she'd been mine. The story could have ended with her death, with a funeral and fading memories. Instead, it continued through every sick student who graduated, every teacher who chose compassion, every policy that bent toward justice. Alice Kim had lived only 18 years, but her impact would last generations. And somewhere in heaven, I knew she was smiling that brilliant smile, watching her angels continue the work she'd started, proud that her bucket list had included so much more than just her own graduation. She'd wanted to change the world. Mission accomplished, Alice. Mission absolutely accomplished.